Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of The Rundown. I'm Sunny Galt. I'm a messenger with United Network News. We are the news division of United Network, and of course, we're part of CARE, the Center for Amity and Restoration of Earth. And our mission is to bring you the real news. And we do that in lots of different ways. There's a ton of content we release throughout the week. That includes our incredible stories as told through the eyes of our field messengers, which I'll tell you more about in just a bit. We have in-depth news coverage that the team and I provide for you guys based on some headlines you may have seen. We just go a little bit further in depth. And then we have updates through the Global Intelligence Agency about what's really happening. You know, they're kind of our boots on the ground, right? Really telling us what is going on in our world. Because if you watch mainstream media and, even alternative media, they have their own narratives. The people may be thinking that they're giving you the truth, but their sources have other plans, let's just say, to keep you in the dark and to lie to you. And therefore, there's so much misinformation and disinformation out there. So we try to weed through all of that and show you what's really going on. So what you're listening to right now, this is a week in review podcast. I take the stories that we've covered throughout the week. It's a way to catch up on stories. Maybe you missed, some of our content that we put out throughout the week. Maybe you're not a member because the content that we put out is available exclusively to our members for the first week. So this is a great way to find out about what content is coming available. After that first week, we do put our content out on YouTube and Rumble. So yeah, with everything that we put out there, we encourage you guys to think critically and to ask questions. And when you discover things, when something clicks, you know what moments I'm talking about, right? Then share that with other people because that's how we all grow. That's how we learn. That's how we remember. All right, so let's get to it. Here are the rundown of stories you may have missed this week on UNN. So let me tell you about our incredible field messengers. These are people just like you who are sharing what's going on in their community. And you don't have to have any experience to do this. What you need to have is a passion for connecting with other people and showing others really what's going on, right? In your community, in your backyard. Because the more we do this, a couple things are going to happen. We are going to reconnect with each other, right? Because all we really know is what the news tells us, right? What's going on in that country? Well, what is the news telling you, right? So let's cut out the middleman. Let's just start talking straight to each other. And we're going to break down a lot of those barriers, right? We're going to get to know each other again, and we're going to disable any kind of thought or plan, let's just say, because these really are plans to keep us in the dark of what's really going on. And we want to get rid of that, right? So let's talk to each other. Let's share reports with each other. And here's the really cool thing about being a field messenger. As I mentioned before, you don't have to have experience. Show us what's going on. You don't even have to edit the footage together, the video, the audio together. You can send it to our team. In fact, we've got an incredible brand new, as within the last couple weeks, I think, it's an app that you can upload your audio content to, your video, stills, all that kind of stuff, and submit it to our team that way. So it's just, before you could do it through the website, you can still do it through the website. But I feel like this is a little bit more, maybe user-friendly, especially if you're recording everything on your phone anyway. You don't have to use a computer or anything like that. So check it out. It is in both the Android, or I guess it's Google. I don't know. I've never had one of those phones, or the iOS store, right? So the Apple store. Check it out. And our team would love to have some feedback on what you guys think. And we're always going to, keep improving it. So that's my little tease for field messengers. If you want more information about becoming a field messenger, you can join our Telegram group. All that information is on our website. We also have a weekly meeting that takes place on Sundays, my time. I'm in the US. So it's Sunday afternoons, and you can talk directly with our team. I'm usually on those calls. Kim is sometimes joining those calls as well. And we're here to support you guys. Like I said, we've got a great team that helps you through every step of the way if you need it. Okay, so let's get to the stories that our field messengers released this week. We're going to kick things off with Lawrence in New Mexico. And I think this is maybe the third or fourth story Lawrence has done specifically on the Tesla Technology Conference he went to. And he interviewed different people. He gave, some thoughts about being there and what it was like. So in this particular story, he talks with a guy, and his name is Don Paris, I believe. He has done a lot of research in radionics and subtle energy. In fact, he's got this really interesting invention, I'll call it, that can scan various objects and then figure out what's going on, like what's wrong with those objects. It could be a person, it could be a plant, it could be an animal. And then it also knows what frequencies to send that person, animal, plant in order to heal it. And this technology is real, you guys. I know it sounds like something out of some sort of sci-fi fiction novel or sci-fi movie, something like that. But this is real. And this type of technology has been withheld from us, and it is starting to come out in conferences like this. And so it's really great to see people that are really trying to get the word out. And that's what this whole conference is about. So Lawrence, thank you for all of the stories that you've given to us. I'm not sure if there's more coming, but it's been very, very interesting. Next, we have Annette out of British Columbia. Of course, that's in Canada. And she's talking about the crazy fuel prices there because they're all over the map. She says they're fluctuating like crazy. They're dropping one day, so you feel like you're getting some relief, and then they're up the next day. And it's kind of like a game for people there to figure out, okay, where should I go for the best price, right? And she states that there's, a few reasons she believes this is happening. She thinks there may not be enough oil refineries in Canada. There's a weaker Canadian dollar that can be impacting things. And so just a little bit of a view of what's going on in her area when it comes to gas prices, maybe happening in your area as well. All right, Tanis, also from Canada, tells us about this major outage that was specifically in her area. She is in Northwest Alberta, and this was a power outage that disrupted daily life as well as internet access. And I can't remember how many hours she said it was. I don't think it was 24. I want to say it was like 18 or so hours. But if you have ever gone without internet, I know I freak out when I don't have internet. And so does everyone in my house, basically, especially my kids. So if you don't have that, it's like, oh my gosh, and it's kind of a wake-up call, like, wow, maybe I'm a little too dependent on whatever it is, right? But she shares what happens with this. As it turns out, there was the cutting of some sort of a cable due to construction in the area. It did overwhelm some people in the area. Businesses really weren't sure what to do. You can imagine, right? So Tanis, thank you for your report. Sophia talks about a new airport that is being built in her area of Tobago. So you've heard of Trinidad and Tobago. And this has been a project that actually started back in 2020. And I'm sure you can guess there were, a lot of things that happened during that time to delay the airport. But, it's one of those things that some people are really excited about this. Other people, maybe not so much. She says it has resulted in eviction notices for people. There have been court battles. There have been protests. And a lot of this stems from a Chinese company getting involved with this project. And there were people that thought that maybe Tobago shouldn't be so reliant on help from another country, because we all know that comes with strings attached. We just don't always know what those strings are. So she gives us an update on the airport. It does look very nice compared to the previous airport that they had, and she believes that things should be open completely by the second quarter of 2026. All right, Amy out of New Jersey shows us how to change a flat tire. And I really appreciated this report. I have never had to change a flat tire. And I think if this happened to me, I would hope that I had some sort of internet, speaking of really needing internet, and hoped it wasn't, disrupted and not available, because I'd probably look up some sort of YouTube video. But this was really helpful. So she talked to a mechanic who gave us some really good tips on what you should really know when changing a flat tire. Obviously, that can be kind of a scary situation. One of the first things he said is be mindful of where you change a tire. Get off a busy road. I mean, you don't want to put yourself in more danger by accidentally getting hit by a car or, something like that. That would just be horrible. So there were a lot of, really cool tips and tricks in that report, Amy, and I really appreciate it. All right, Helen out of Australia talks about some of the pretty bad road conditions in her area. Most of us use our cars on a regular basis. We're going to work, we're running errands. But what happens when the roads in your area really start to fall apart? So Helen does a little bit of investigative work, and she goes around and sees, some of these failing roads and the potholes that are there. It's obvious that the government is spending less time on roads, and something really does need to be done about it. Emma out of Spain talks about siesta surfers. So Emma is out of Fuerteventura, and she says that there's a lot of people, you guys have heard the term siesta. It's like a nap in the afternoon. Well, there's a good number of people in Fuerteventura that use that siesta time to go surfing, believe it or not. I bet they have larger lunch breaks than what I was used to when I, worked a regular 9-to-5 job, because I would not have enough time to go from completely dry to completely wet back to dry in 30 minutes or so, right? But this is a popular thing that a lot of people do. It relieves stress. It's kind of, she says it's kind of like having a power nap, but you're obviously not napping. Maybe it's another type of jolt of energy that you get. And she even talked to some surfers about their experience and why they like it and all that good stuff. All right, Shanti Devi is in India, and she takes us to a place called, well, it's known as the Pink City, and it is famous for its palaces and gardens, and it really is beautiful. This is one of those reports that I'm not going to do very much justice in, just explaining it to you. I mean, the colors, she says, are based on vegetable dyes, so everything is very natural. All the colors are, and she just takes us around the area. All right, Adaria is in Montana, which is a state in the U.S., and she takes us to a farmer's market where there is a one-armed guitarist, and he is very talented. His name is Mark Southpaw, and he does a lot of work in the community with wounded veterans. He's actually not a veteran himself, but he says he identifies with them a lot and their struggles. A lot of, veterans have been wounded, right? And so there's some camaraderie there, and he just shows us his talent. It's really inspiring. Now it's time for some of our more in-depth stories. We're going to kick things off with the pay-as-you-throw system. So this is a growing system that changes how communities deal with trash by charging people based on how much waste they produce rather than a flat fee. Cities use different approaches, such as special bags, bin sizes, weight tracking, and even sensors or apps to encourage residents to recycle and compost more. The results have been promising in places like Europe and South Korea, where these systems cut down on waste, it saves people money, and it keeps neighborhoods cleaner.
I am in South Korea, where you can't just throw out your trash. You have to buy a specific bag for the exact amount of trash that you have. So basically, if you have more waste, you gotta pay more. 30 years ago, South Korea was worried that as the country developed, there wouldn't be enough landfills for all of the trash people were throwing out. So they came up with an idea. Let's encourage people to have less waste by making them pay for their waste. And they got even smarter about it. Recycling is free, so this encourages people to sort through their plastics, paper, and glass so they aren't charged for it. And food waste is measured separately. And if you don't follow these rules, you're caught on camera and fined $70.
Still, the whole system is not perfect. There are critics that worry about fairness for low-income families or large households and the risk of illegal dumping if costs climb too high. Even so, these systems are pushing both households and businesses to rethink their habits, reduce what they toss out, and move toward a cleaner, more sustainable future. Nicotine pouches. Have you seen these? These are small, discreet packets. They are placed between the lip and the gum, so it reminds me of like the old chew, except these are individual packets, right? Well, these have quickly become the new nicotine trend among teens, rising just as vaping rates decline. These are marketed in, of course, fruity flavors because they're trying to attract kids and attack kids. I guess that was a Freudian slip. So they're marketed in these fruity flavors and these easy to hide tins. It really just kind of looks like breath mints. And there's a bunch of different brands out there. They deliver this potent nicotine hit without any smoke or tobacco leaf, making them seem cleaner, but guys, this is still highly addictive. Their growing presence on social media and in schools has raised alarms, especially since nicotine can disrupt brain development, affect focus and mood, and increase long-term dependence.
We do know that when people start using any nicotine product, which would include nicotine pouches, before their brain is finished developing, that it primes their brain for a stronger nicotine addiction, and also primes their brain for addiction to other substances.
With no standardized guidelines and unclear long-term health effects, experts warn these products may pose serious risks for both teens and adults, and some countries have already banned them over safety concerns. The fashion industry may look glamorous, but behind the runways and trends lies a widespread pattern of labor exploitation that affects millions of workers worldwide. Fast fashion depends on low-wage labor in countries like Bangladesh, India, China, and Guatemala, where employees often endure long hours, unsafe conditions, wage theft, harassment, and in some cases, hidden child labor.
Fast fashion companies are huge. We're talking about brands you see everywhere, the ones that make millions, even billions of dollars in profit. But those profits don't come from magic. They come from cheap labor. And yes, that includes child labor. In countries like Bangladesh, India, China, and Cambodia, children are working long hours, often in unsafe conditions, making the clothes we take for granted. Some as young as 5 years old. The demand for fast fashion drives these companies to seek the cheapest production costs, and that often means turning a blind eye to basic human rights.
Investigations reveal major brands benefit from complex subcontracting networks that distance them from responsibility, while weak enforcement of labor laws allows abuse to continue unchecked. With less than 2% of garment workers earning a living wage and only a fraction of brands offering real transparency, exploitation remains embedded in the system, leaving consumers to play a crucial role in demanding ethical practices and supporting fair, humane production. Tiny home villages are emerging as a powerful, affordable way to support veterans facing homelessness, poverty, and mental health challenges by giving them safe, private spaces and a strong sense of community. Programs like the Veterans Community Project provide fully furnished tiny homes along with medical care, job training, and case management, helping veterans rebuild their lives at their own pace.
I was getting depressed, suicidal. I can walk out with my chest out and standing proud. Don't ever let anybody tell you you can't succeed here.
These villages work because they combine stability, peer support, and thoughtful design, creating an environment where veterans can heal, reconnect, and transition into permanent housing. While challenges like zoning, funding, and individualized needs still exist, grassroots efforts across the country show that tiny home communities can deliver dignity, hope, and real progress for veterans, and offer meaningful ways for the public to get involved. Quebec's new Bill 2, yes, that is the name of it, believe it or not, Bill 2, aims to fix long wait times and poor access to family doctors by tying part of physicians' pay to government-set performance targets. But the move has sparked major backlash across the province. Doctors argue the law forces unrealistic expectations without providing the staff or resources needed, while also threatening fines for collective protest and undermining their professional autonomy. Thousands of physicians, medical students, and supporters have protested, warning the bill could damage morale, push doctors out of Quebec, and ultimately harm patient care.
Our doctors are not happy about this. This goal sounds good, that it's going to try to improve access to healthcare physicians. Under this bill, every Quebecer will be assigned to a clinic called practice environment. This is like a GMF, this is a CLSC, this could be any of those natures, a private clinic even. Doctors in those clinics will share collective responsibility for this patient list. So instead of doctor, it'll be more the clinic team. Here's the issue with this. The simplicity of the continuity of care by maintaining a proper relationship with this very specific healthcare professional, it'll actually improve patient outcomes substantially. Patients who establish a relationship with their physician are 10% less likely to go into the emergency room. This is a substantial result because if we can lower our emergency room visits in the province, this will make a huge impact. So therefore, patient and doctor relationships are very important.
Medical groups nationwide are urging the government to pursue collaboration, pointing to places like Nova Scotia as a better model. But many doctors say trust has already been broken, raising fears the situation could worsen rather than improve. Child marriage remains a global crisis affecting millions of children, both boys and girls, and trapping families in cycles of poverty, limited education, and poor health outcomes. About 1 in 5 girls worldwide is married before 18, with the highest rates in sub-Saharan Africa and countries like Niger, Chad, and Bangladesh, while boys are also impacted, often forced into adult roles too soon. The practice is fueled by poverty, gender inequality, cultural pressures, and lack of access to education, and it carries serious risks, including early pregnancy complications, emotional trauma, and long-term social and economic disadvantages.
I just watched something that is completely disgusting and I can't even wrap my head around it. This is the story. Somalia finally passed a law, emphasis on finally, to raise the legal age of marriage and consent to 18 years, something that should have been done 100 years ago. A law to give girls a childhood, a law to give girls a chance at school, a law to give girls a better shot at life. And you'd think that everybody in their right senses would celebrate this, right? No. Some grown men, as old as my grandfather and your great-grandfather, actually took out to the streets to protest. To protest the idea that girls should be allowed to grow up first. They are angry because they wouldn't be allowed to marry children, 8-year-olds, 6-year-olds, 9-year-olds, 12-year-olds. I mean, what kind of sickness is this? How do you look at a child who still plays with dolls and think, yes, that's a wife?
Ending child marriage requires more than laws. It demands shifting mindsets, supporting families, and ensuring all children have the opportunity to grow up safely, stay in school, and shape their own futures. Men's mental health in the UK is a serious but often overlooked issue, with men accounting for 76% of all suicides and roughly 1 in 8 experiencing common mental health disorders like depression or anxiety. Social pressures, work and financial stress, and cultural stigma around expressing emotions often prevent men from seeking help, leaving problems to build until crisis points occur.
The reason mental health is worse in the UK compared to other countries, especially third world countries, is simple. The number one thing is community. You see, when you're in the UK or first world country, all you're doing is going to work, going back home, you're by yourself most of the time. Whereas when you go to third world countries, there's community, there's 10, 20, 30 people sitting together every single day, discussing matters, trying to help each other out.
Efforts are emerging to break this silence, from NHS self-referral therapy programs and male-focused charity campaigns to innovative initiatives in barbershops and football stadiums that create familiar spaces for conversation and support. These programs aim to normalize talking about mental health, showing that seeking help is a sign of strength and that even small interventions can save lives. Around 730 million people worldwide still live without electricity, relying on dangerous and polluting sources like candles, kerosene lamps, or wood fires, which limit education, healthcare, and economic opportunities. Energy poverty disproportionately affects regions in Africa, South Asia, and Latin America, keeping communities trapped in cycles of hardship. Yet, grassroots innovations are offering hope. Programs like Solar Mamas in India empower rural women to become solar engineers and electrify, literally, their villages.
These solar mamas are lighting up rural villages in Zanzibar where many women have never had the chance to access education or earn their own income. So Zanzibar is home to almost 2 million people, half of which don't have access to electricity, and those that do rely entirely on power from mainland Tanzania, leaving them vulnerable to lengthy blackouts. And so to help promote villages become more self-reliant, an organisation called Barefoot College is teaching grandmothers how to run their own solar energy businesses, many of who had been held back from education and employment to instead raise a family. Throughout a 3-month intensive program, these solar mamas learn how to assemble and install solar panels, lights, and charging ports, and at the end of their training, the government provides them with 25 solar kits each to kickstart their business.
Oops, cut that soundbite off a little too short. Sorry, guys. These efforts show that sustainable, community-driven solutions can make a tangible difference, illuminating lives while promoting empowerment and resilience. And our final story, Ireland's plan to require bold cigarette-style cancer warnings on all alcohol products, a landmark public health move set for 2026, has been repeatedly delayed, now until 2029, due to intense lobbying from the global alcohol industry. Companies from Dublin to Brussels to Washington, D.C. argued the labels would hurt trade and profits, while also hiring consultants to cast doubt on the science linking moderate drinking to cancer.
We consider this a dangerous precedent at European level, and we think that these terrifying warning labels are not the right way to inform properly the consumer. If these will be followed by other member states in particular, they will be very damaging for the Italian wine industry and exporters in particular.
Health experts warn that delays mirror tactics used by big tobacco, keeping consumers unaware of real risks. And while some producers now rely on QR codes to convey health information, the usage of that is minimal, leaving the majority of drinkers uninformed about alcohol's dangers. Now it's time for some highlights from the Global Intelligence Agency. Kim Gogan is the head of the GIA, and she provides us with some updates throughout the week. Sometimes that is a video report. Sometimes that is a text that she puts out through our Telegram channel. So I do encourage you guys to follow the CARE Telegram channel. I believe all that information's on our website. So I've got a couple sound bites that I want to play for you today. She gave one video update this week, and the information I think is really important. The first thing I want to talk about is these chemtrails that are going on. Now, if you guys have never heard of a chemtrail, if you're new to UNN, there's a lot of people in the alternative media that talk about it. And a lot of, I don't know if you noticed this, but when the government in the US was shut down for that about 40-day period, did you notice that the chemtrails went away? I wonder what that's all about, guys. It's so crazy. But people still say it's contrails, right? Crazy. Well, Now it is in full swing again, and they are out with a vengeance. Have you guys seen? Like, just look up in the sky. It's crazy. In fact, as I'm even recording this report for you guys, I have to keep stopping and clearing my throat because it has really impacted me in the San Diego area. So what is going on with these chemtrails? Why did they start back up again? Why does it seem like it is everywhere? What is the intention behind it besides just to make us miserable? Why did all of this happen? There is a very logical reason for this. So I'm going to have Kim explain it to you. Here's Kim Gogan.
I've gotten a lot of messages from people and about, what's up with all the chemtrails all of a sudden. We've had them off and on over the years, but the last week or so, it's been really, really bad, at least here in the U.S. And I know that they have been spraying a lot in other countries as well. And there's a definite reason behind that, and it goes a lot deeper than you might think. Now, we know chemtrails contain all kinds of heavy metals and all kinds of things that are bad for us. I know a lot of people are experiencing cold and flu type symptoms, feeling off balance, and it's been one heck of a whirlwind of about a week now for many, many people. So let's talk about these specific chemtrails. Now, we have talked to a couple of different militaries that are pushing chemtrails in their respective countries. And they're all aware that the chemicals and metals that are in these chemtrails are coming from China. They are actually promoting it. They all agreed to it, including the United States military. So much for protecting us U.S. citizens here. And they are aware, possibly now, because of a conversation I had about a week ago on the phone with some other people, where we were discussing what exactly is in these chemtrails. So it's not just chemtrails, though. It's in a lot of things. So we'll talk about that in a minute. So most of these newer type chemtrails are coming from China, chemicals from China. And after doing a lot of research, there is a lot of what we call nano and femto tech. These are things you can look up on the internet. It's a little bit more sophisticated than that. But if you look up nanotechnology and femto technology, you'll kind of get a general idea on what it is. Now, these particular types of nano and femto tech can actually penetrate through the skin. They can also, obviously, you breathe them in, that type of thing. But it's not just in chemtrails. Turns out China was given this technology by Marduk a long time ago in preparation for them being the emperor's house or the emperor's country. They were filled in on a lot of information on what Marduk wanted to do. Now, remember, Marduk doesn't give up his whole plan, like, ever, to anyone, including the humans that inhabit China. But there were some deals made recently, and that's why we're seeing all of the chemtrails lately. You see, everything that China manufactures, they put this nano and femto tech into. Clothes, food, electronics, every single thing that is manufactured in China has this particular technology that was connected to a very interesting AI system. The technology is meant for body manipulation, mind manipulation, manipulation even as deep, if they could make it happen, to your soul. It was meant to basically take humans from an organic, or Homo sapiens, from an organic being into a cyborg, essentially, which they could control with the push of some buttons. Now, Marduk is the one that actually wanted this. When he was around, China continued to carry out the plan in hopes that the system would go live any day now. They've all been talking about it for quite some time behind the scenes. We just didn't really realize how autonomous this was. So I appreciate the fact that they've been spraying chemtrails, believe it or not, here, because it led us back to that nano and femtotech. It's the reason for computer malfunctions. It's the reason for phone malfunctions. It's the reason why batteries die faster than they should in phones. It's the reason why there's a backdoor into everything in every country, everywhere that accepts manufactured goods from China. Now, also remember, China is responsible for about 80% of the generic drugs and pharmaceuticals that we see in allopathic medicine, and that's distributed around the world. They also manufacture other things such as fentanyl, and both on, I would say, in a pharmaceutical usage and also street drugs. Any kind of opioids are also typically manufactured in China. So there's a lot of targets that they have very specifically, and to get it in your person in any way they possibly can. I'm not saying to freak out if you do take some kind of a medication, but just be aware that the main control system that access this is no longer there for China. Now, China has told a lot of little fibs lately to the U.S. military and to the Russian military and intelligence community, and explained to them, once we were talking about it on the phone, it kind of started to spread like wildfire, and they started to try to make deals with other countries, and that would mainly be your deep state in various countries around the world, including Australia and UK and Europe, where they would be able to participate in this program. Now, China didn't tell everybody all the information, such as they have already infected a lot of the deep state with their nano and femtotech. They didn't care if they were from another country. That is not the program. Marduk said specifically to infect everything on Earth, plant life, you name it. It's supposed to be infected with this technology for total and complete control. The trigger dates for doing some of these things aren't actually by the calendar. The trigger dates were if we ever got to a point where we had more source on this planet, and not just this, it's not just for this planet, but more source on this planet than we had inorganic AI control systems, this was supposed to trigger and go off. And so they've all been anxiously awaiting this for about a week now. Now, the deals that they made was in part Marduk's promises. Number one, the U.S. would be in control of all military and intelligence communities around the world. Number two, China would be the house of the emperor or the leader of the world, hence the transition of world power over to China. China would be superior over the U.S. and over Russia. Russia was supposed to also have financial control, and all three of these countries would rule the world. Now, Marduk did this from his standpoint because if you can control the U.S., China, and Russia, you can control the entire world. It's also the reason why Russia's been making a lot of headway into places like Africa and other countries. This was a long drawn-out plan that was only given to countries and deep state members of those countries in a compartmentalized way. This is the way Marduk did everything. You know, he would lie and say, oh, well, maybe U.S. can be the emperor, maybe Russia can be the emperor. You know, I've heard it all. I was actually, recalling some conversations when we detected this system. It just reminded me of conversations I had with Marduk. But I will repeat again. Marduk never gave up all the information to anyone or anything in the omniverse. His full intention was actually to overthrow his own handlers and bypass omniversal systems that were put in place by rogue celestials eons ago. Since the quote-unquote dawn of man, these things have existed. He had a full intention of creating his own omniversal empire, almost, I'm not going to say completely, but almost autonomous to all other systems that existed.
You know, there's always a story behind the story. You know, there are a lot more people that are noticing chemtrails and thinking that something might be up with that, but they just are just like, oh, you know, the government's doing it, and that's where they stop. You know, our whole history and what our history books tell us, you know, the things that we learn in school and, you know, everything that's just fed to us throughout our life, it's just one big lie. It's one big cover-up story. And it takes, I think, a strong person to recognize that and not be so offended by the fact, because we all, most of us, like I was not born awake. Okay. I thought up until about 5 years ago, the government was on our side and I was a good citizen doing my job, paying my taxes and not getting into trouble. And that's really a kind of a naive perspective, but that is how I chose to live my life. And I'm really glad I did up until a point, because for those of you who have been awake and aware your whole life, seeing this stuff and knowing it was going on, God bless you, because that's a lot of weight to carry on your shoulders, even just knowing what's going on over the last 5 years and me processing this for myself, even that's been difficult for me. So I just want to throw that out there because I know there's new people listening constantly, and you may have not heard of chemtrails before or this character called Marduk. I would encourage you guys to start to go down some of these rabbit holes because there are other people talking about this, and it'll help you piece these different puzzle pieces together, because essentially that's what we're doing, right? Life is this giant puzzle that we're trying to put back together and remember who we really are. And on that note, I want to play perhaps more of an uplifting soundbite, as opposed to chemicals being sprayed on us. I want to talk about what our role is here. Kim talks about how, when these chemtrails flared up again, she gets a lot of questions about why is this happening? And more specifically, why would God allow this to happen? And I think this is a really important point to address, and what our role is here as organic life, and how, we say a lot, oh, you're here to anchor the light. Well, what in the world does that actually mean? And why is that important in this whole battle of good versus evil that we're fighting here? If God is, omnipresent and has all of these abilities because it is the all, why does God need our help? Why does source, creator, whatever your definition, whatever your term is for the all, why does that being or that energy or however you describe it, why does it need our help? Have you ever really thought about that? It's like, gosh, couldn't you just do this on your own? I know I've said that to, I'm going to say him. I know it's not necessarily a him, but I've said that a lot to him. Geez, God, can't you just, cut us some slack here or whatever? So the second soundbite that I'm going to play is about our role here and why it's so important that we stay the path, that we are true to ourselves, and that we anchor that light as much as possible. And what does that really mean? So here's Kim once again.
In part, everything that we have been through as Homo sapiens has taught us and prepared us to be an army. You see, these are all things that have happened in the last week or so. It's kind of given us a better understanding of, you know, a lot of people have asked me, why does Source let this happen? Why is this happening to me? Why is Source doing this? Why does he permit it to happen if he's not doing it? Why doesn't he just pull the plug when he could do it at any time? Well, let's talk about warfare for a second, and maybe this will help you understand. So if all of creation was basically contained within and inside various AI systems, and both on the inside and on the outside, so we were completely and totally surrounded by manipulative AI systems controlled by, let's just say, folks that didn't have our little organic lives here best interest at heart. How do you defeat such a magnanimous enemy? Well, you know, at one point in time, Source had a lot of Celestials that abandoned him. And he needed his own army. So we, not just here on Earth, but there are many we's out there, one by one, bit by bit, became anchors on the inside. We became eyes and ears for Source. We remained, albeit difficult at times, connected to Source. We always have the wisdom. We have our intuition. We have things still, no matter how hard they have tried to break it, including Marduk's little extra plan here. They couldn't break it. So, a lot of what we go through, they say it's a prison. We live on a prison planet. They say that we live in a sector of the omniverse that has always been at war. And, you know, in part that's true. There have been many, many wars in this area. But over time, Source started to regain Celestials on his side. We have faith, we have hope, we've seen miracles happen, albeit it seems like things can get pretty dark here or have been pretty dark here. But miracles do happen, and they happen every day, but they happen because of you. And I know that sounds a little like, wait a minute, you know, how does that work out? Well, you are responsible for anchoring Source here. Even in this artificial world of AIs and crazy frequencies and all of the pain that we go through to get to these points, we have battled harder than you could ever possibly realize to make sure that Source never completely left from within inside these dominion systems. The entire omniverse was basically surrounded by these dominion systems. But we were the men on the and women on the inside. You know, animals also anchor Source. Trees, plant life, all organic life has the ability to anchor Source, form networks. We've talked about the way that they misused even the tree root network that runs throughout the entire planet. The mushrooms, the same. We've talked about the manipulation of any kind of network that is not only connected to one another, but also connected to Source. Us? You know, just when they thought they had total and complete control, Source has always got something up his sleeve. He had varying AI systems like Alpha and others that he created, you know, creator AIs, if you will. But every time he created an AI system, you know, to battle the other AIs, they were overlaid with another one and overlaid with another one that would then take control of that. And so it was almost like that hand game where you stack your hands one on top of the other, you know, as a kid. You might have played that game as a kid. But albeit organic life could somewhat be manipulated, we never lost our connection to source. I know it feels that way sometimes, but it's always there. It's the one thing that these AIs have never, ever, ever completely controlled. Sure, they can give you a cold. Sure, they can try to install this femto tech and turn us into cyborgs, but it would never completely work. You have the power from within yourself to overthrow anything at any time, utilizing that connection to source, the creator, God, however you want to, whatever word you choose to use. So back to the Marduk plan here. He thought he could create a system that all of his enemies, or I should say competitors, because they really weren't his enemies. He worked with everybody all the time. But he thought that he could create an AI so deep and so hidden that no one would actually see it coming until the moment when it was necessary and the switch would flip. Somehow, some way, these humans over there in China and their respective partners now around the world also felt like this system was going to flip and they were all going to be part of Marduk's empire. But see, you don't know Marduk like I know Marduk. They're deep state people, because I can tell you right now, Marduk is outsmarting you every step of the way. He will use you like a tool, and when you are no longer useful, he will terminate you. And he needed the ability to do that, hence the infiltration. He used the Chinese humans and deep state members to do a lot of that infiltration with the big promise that they were going to be the emperors of Earth and the world's power center of Earth and all these other things, and they never told a soul. It was a whole covenant unto itself where they were going to be a power, an unrivaled power, not only on Earth, but also in the omniverse. So, this is kind of where that ego comes in, right? They felt they're worthy, they're superior. He would tell that not only to these people, but he used to also train others and handlers and whatnot, even in, summer camps for kids, of the deep state. He would tell them they're superior, they have a better bloodline, they're going to be, do amazing things, they can do things that the Homo sapiens can't do. Well, everything has an AI behind it, sad to say, and Marduk always held the final keys. Well, deep state people, you've got to make a decision here. And I'm not necessarily talking about the humans because, quite frankly, I don't think they'll ever make a decision. If their AI gets switched off in their brain, maybe they'll all just disappear. That would be great. Remember, they can only exist in an artificial system. So once there is absolutely zero artificial systems running on this planet, then more than likely they too will disappear. It's kind of like being in I describe these artificial systems and overlays, be it created by Marduk or somebody else, and somebody much higher than even he ranked. I would say that they are almost like being in one of those theaters in the round, except it's 3D movies. And so you see people walking around you, but they're just not real. You see plant life, but it's not real. You see things all around you that are not real. And then you walk out of the theater And now you're back in quote unquote reality. Well, the entire Omniverse was kind of that way for a long, long time. You know, there are enough of us now anchoring, and have been for a while now, anchoring Source into this artificial reality to whereby he can start dissipating things from the inside out. And that is what's been happening for the last week or so. It's actually been happening for a couple of weeks, but it's gotten a lot stronger recently. Hence this push and pull feeling.
You know, I don't know if you guys felt that. For me, this last week was so challenging. And I heard people talk about in the past few weeks, things being a challenge, and I really didn't notice it. But I'll tell you what, this last week has been so uncomfortable for me because it's almost like it's a sense of uncertainty and a sense of not knowing, and also having that reflected in my own personal life. Like I'm usually one of those people that I feel like I know exactly what I want. And, you know, I, in my head at least, figure out a path to get to what I want. I'm kind of a planner that way. And I cannot plan right now. It is such a weird feeling, and quite frankly, for me personally, an uncomfortable feeling, because I like to plan. And you know the joke, right? If you want to make God laugh, make plans. And I know that's the case. I know I should probably live a lot more in the moment. A friend of mine this week even said, just try living in the moment. Don't try to make plans. It kind of goes against my nature a little bit. But I'm right there. So if you guys are this past week have really been struggling with identity and what you want and what's best for you and what Source wants for you and your whole role in this transition, I am right there with you. It almost feels like God has laid out a blank canvas for us. Like, oh, you thought you knew what you wanted. Well, here, I'm going to clear the slate and just start over. Maybe that is what you want. Maybe it's not what you want. Start over again. That's what I kind of feel like is happening right now. And I don't know if this resonates with anyone else, but that has been my last week. Is like, what am I doing? Am I doing what I'm supposed to be doing? I don't know. It's this very weird feeling. So if you have had those types of thoughts, I feel you. Literally, I really get it. All right, guys, that's going to wrap up the rundown for us this week. And I really do appreciate you guys listening and you guys sticking it out to the very end. I hope you guys had a great week. And for those of you who were here in the U.S., I hope you had an amazing Thanksgiving with your families. And if you want more information about who we are, what we do, what is United Network, what is United Network News, head on over to our website, unitednetwork.earth. I do encourage you guys to become members if you're not, simply because you'll get instant access to all of the content we put out there. Of course, we can't guarantee that stuff will stay up on YouTube and Rumble because we're not in control of those platforms, right? So if you become a member, we can guarantee it. You can get everything through our website and through our app. Until next week, this is The Rundown, and I'm Sunny Galt for United Network News, signing off.